Welcome to Circuit Paulo Armagnac in Nogaro to start the Blancpain GT Series for 2015 here on Easter Sunday. 7 races for the Sprint Series, 5 for the Endurance Series. And we kick off here, John Watson, with 9 makes of cars, 19 entries, 11 different teams. And we don't know who's going to win. Isn't that fantastic?
Well, I think there's a bit of a feeling in the paddock that we're going to see something that we're familiar with here at Nogaro. The nature of the circuit, it's a wonderful little circuit, 14 corners, but it has been somewhat of an Audi fest here in previous seasons. But just, you know, Easter weekend, always a major motorsport weekend throughout Europe. If you live in the UK and you're old enough to remember, it used to be Easter weekend at Thruxton, Formula 2. In fact, they ran Formula 2 here.
And let's take a look at the circuit, John. We talked about it's a good old-fashioned circuit. 14 corners. Of course, the pits aren't where they used to be. That long back straight running down to turn 7 and then snaking past the old pit and paddock through the final sweeper to the finish line. 3.636 kilometres. Plenty to get it going. It's not going to suit all makes of cars. It's fiddly. It
is fiddly, and it's a circuit that sort of pays a premium to the kind of setup which ironically is what the Audi has. But there are a number of other teams here that Audi are fully aware of, are more than capable of taking the battle to them, not least of all the Brazil Sports Trophy Team Brazil, BMWs of Maxime Martin and Dirk Müller. That is probably the car that everybody in the pit lane thinks, assuming everything comes together in qualifying. And of course Maxime Martin, the Belgian driver, known to be extremely canny when it comes to showing his hand, and he will only do so in qualifying.
Well, coming in this morning, there were campers all around the circuit. People are queuing to come in here. This is a classic French Easter weekend meeting. What chance for the Bentleys for them to watch? We've seen all the flags around the circuit, all supporting different makes of car. But how good are the Bentleys? We've got Maxi Book, runner-up last year.
Yes, Max Book, and he's going to be joined this year.
There's their car on the screen.
Yeah, no, sorry, Vincent Abril, who was in an Audi last year, he will be with Max Book. This car, it may not be the most ideal circuit, Bentley themselves saying that the nature of Nogaro circuit slightly more favourable to the what you might call mid-engine car, particularly the likes of the Audi, the Lamborghini, the 458 Ferrari that's also here. But this is a very, very competitive car under normal circumstances, and the HTP team, they're delighted with what they've seen given to them. It's a very sophisticated, it looks like a Bentley Continental you would buy to drive on the road. But believe me, the diet that this car has gone on to get it down to its racing weight is remarkable. But also, it is really very much a race car rather than a road car developed. I mean, it is a very sophisticated car indeed.
It looks great. That's Vincent Abril, who's the number 1 driver, will be starting this first qualifying session. 15 minutes coming up, and then we have a 10-minute break, another 15 minutes for driver 2, and then, of course, we come to the sharp end to complete the hour with the final session. Quite cool, as you can see, spectators up on the banking, hands in pockets to keep warm. It was a beautiful sunrise this morning. We had hanging mist as we drove in, but not quite as warm as some Easters down here in the past.
No, it's been changeable over the last 3 or 4 seasons when we have been here at Easter time. Easter, of course, sometimes is slightly earlier in the year than it is. This is sort of a middle in terms of either early or late Easter. And of course, weather temperatures at this time of the morning, we're around about 10, 12 Celsius. But if you're out on the racetrack, it's pretty exposed. There's a light breeze blowing, not particularly strong in any direction. Nevertheless, I'm in hands and pockets in the early hours or early-ish hours of Sunday morning here in Nogaro, and everybody is waiting to see these cars get on track for the serious end of qualifying.
Absolutely, they're the ISR Audis. Just seen one car go past up towards pit exit, very keen to get started, the FAC Autotech, the only Porsche here this weekend, and their number 1 driver, Marcel Wagner, will be probably the first driver out onto the circuit. Final checks, waiting for the wheels to go on. Audi Sport, you're pointing to Audi Sport customer care.
Yeah, no, that's a big part of GT racing around the world. I mean, we know that Porsche have a massive customer base for their various one-make series, as well as when they race in other versions of GT3, as we now see the Lamborghini Gallardo of Alex von Thurn-Taxis. And I don't think it's Alex behind the wheel. It might be Nicky Katzberg who...
No, it should be Alex.
Okay, so
He's
Alex...
down as number 1.
Okay, so Albert von Thurn-Taxis.
John, here's our chance very early on to talk wing mirror colours, because The Belgian Audi Club Team WRT have decided to make their cars look almost identical. But we know yellow wing mirrors, that's number 2, which is out on the track with Christopher Mies on board. He's showing that with Enzo Ide, but that's all they've given us to go on, just some wing mirrors.
Yes, I mean, the predominant colour of the WRT Audis is that matte black, which, you know, that's how they present their cars. They put these various colours in the wings, the wing mirrors. You can see those little winglets on the front of the car. That's the giveaway or the identification to each of the 4 cars entered by WRT. So car number 1 has got white, car 2 is yellow, car 3 red, and then the British driven James Nash, Frank Stippler, of course being German, is black. So this is car number 2 with Christopher Mies and Belgian driver Enzo Ide.
Now, of course, the driver who was seconded really quite late into the series is driving the number 1 Audi, and that's Robin Freen, who is out in this session. Of course, a Caterham Formula 1 reserve driver in the past, has won in pretty much every category in which he goes racing. Seemed very quick yesterday.
Yes, he was, and a very impressive driver. Not a driver who is yet fully, let's say, engaged in what is GT racing, very much a driver from the single-seater background. So he is having to, in effect, learn on the job as to what you need to do with a car, where the use of tyres and the limitation on tyres is actually a very major part of how you end up running your race.
Now, riding on board at the moment, you get to see just how twisty the start of the lap is here at Nogaro, and then we should be cutting through turn 5 here onto the long back straight. This is their one chance to relax, because otherwise it's just relentless cornering.
Yeah.
When you get to the far end, there is a little bit of banking on the corner, a little bit, tiny bit of camber, just to help them round, but heavy braking, and it's an old-fashioned circuit, John.
Yes, it is, and I mean, it's a circuit where there are places you can overtake. You may have to be a little bit forceful. I mean, we've seen overtaking here through turns 9 and 10, and then you're coming back to what was the original pit complex at Nogaro, coming out of turn 11 as you run down to turn 12. Nicky Katzberg in the garage watching and waiting to see as Alex von Turner-Taxis, he's struggling for front-end grip, really. You can see it coming through turn 11, 12. Now onto what was the old start-finish line, the old pitch to the right, then break into turn 13. Quite important to get your entry and your position so 14 flows automatically and get the good run off that corner across start-finish line.
Using a fair bit of curb there on the exit, and just waiting. First time on the board is indeed set by von Turner-Taxis, 1 minute 27.8 seconds. Immediately beaten by the number 2 Audi. Christopher Mies goes top, 1 minute 25.281 seconds. And yesterday they were getting down, in fact, pretty much that sort of level. So it shows they've learnt well in practice yesterday. Now they're starting to apply it.
Yes, now the way that the tyres work, they've all been given 6 sets of tyres, of which 2 were used for the 2 free practice sessions. They've now got 4 sets remaining, and undoubtedly of those 4 sets, every one of them are brand new. So as you move forward into later events, the next sprint round will be at Brands Hatch. They will carry forward 2 of their 6 sets to Brands Hatch, the best 2 of their 6 sets, and then they will be given 4 new sets at Brands Hatch. But here there's a slightly different situation where they get 4 brand new sets for warm-up and for the 2 events. So slight difference, but it will wash itself out as we come down the end of the straight. And this is the car I think is going to be the car that we're going to have to watch. Fastest already in the first sector, personal best in the second sector. This is Maxime Martin and Dirk Muller.
And it's Martin at the wheel.
Yeah, and is it going to go second quickest? No, it's not third. It's currently showing fourth. Maxime Martin, 27.6. Fastest in the first sector, so where was the rest of the time? In sectors 2 and sector 3.
Oh, we have a spinner there.
Yeah, Artelli and Raquelny.
That's the Monegasque double there. Duo then. So Raquelny's had a little spin just to show us his rear wing.
Down at the end of the main straight, you can see just comes in and turns in on the brakes, and the back end refuses to accept it, and around it goes. Hopefully, he stays out of the gravel. He did.
And actually, what you could see there, I was just
Raquelny, Stefan Raquelny.
Stefan Raquelny, and I was just talked before about the
camber.
The camber there, and it just was no use to him at all.
No, he's just,
that's another Audi.
No, this is what is
number
going
2.
on.
So Christopher Mies, who set the first flying lap.
That's coming out of turn 14. Very quick corner. Now, how did he get that wrong? Because we've seen previously, right front of the car.
He's ripped it off.
Well, there's damage certainly. I think it's still there, but he's got clods of earth still attached to the front splitter and bodywork.
Well, he did well to stay close to the track there. Now, we're seeing the other Audis using a lot of curb. That's the Phoenix Racing entry which should have Nicky Meyer-Manhoff at the wheel. Bentley time though, we haven't seen much of them on the screens. And that's 84 with Vincent Abril. We saw him in the cockpit before going out and looking to see his time. He has yet to set his flying lap. He was one of the later ones out of the pit. We have just over 9 minutes remaining in Q1. And fastest time still to early spinner, number 2, Christopher Mies, 1 minute 25.2. Almost 1 second slower is number 6, which is the Phoenix Audi we've just seen with Nicky Meyer-Manhoff at the wheel.
And Maxime Martin has actually improved up to 3rd place, so the BMW is picking up pace. Let's see what Vincent Abril can do in the Bentley. Heavy braking, as you see, coming down the straight. This car, if you take the bog standard out of the showroom Bentley Continental, it weighs over 2 tons, whatever that is in kilograms. And of course the car now down to about 1250 to 1300 kilograms. I mean, it's almost shed half its body weight, half its mass rather than body weight. So the engineering in this car is very much race car engineering rather than adaptation of a road-going GT.
Entirely, but that was a great front shot because its comparison side by side with the little Audi is the beast in comparison.
It's a physically much larger car, punches a much bigger hole in the air and comes across the line. So Vincent Abril goes second quickest.
Goes second, but he's 0.7 of a second down on Christopher Mies, who's in the pits at the moment, but that was his first serious attempt of a flying lap, so that looks promising indeed. But we do need to be down in the 25s in this session to really be showing a competitive turn of speed. McLaren's on the track, and we have 2 in the Hello Kitty livery, and this is the...
And that is a lot of damage to the front of the car. Those wheels are going to be taken, or the rear wheel, in fact. He's just...
He scraped the barries, clearly. Would you say? Is that grass?
I think it's just grass. I think he's just gone off on the exit of 14, and I mean, we saw one of the Mercedes SLSs last year, the Fortec car, actually hitting that barrier and virtually riding the car off. This time it's just superficial damage. As we look at the McLaren again, struggling, I think, more of anything to get tyre temperature.
Well, having just gone out, that's the Rob Bell and Kevin Estra entry. Of course, lots of people not used to seeing the 650S racing yet, so another chance to see. McLaren are bringing out just so many body shapes and models at the moment.
The model range is just almost every week there's something being either refreshed or relaunched. There you can see that he's struggling for a little bit of tyre temperature, he's weaving around to try and put energy into the sidewall of the tyre to give him that little bit of additional initial turn-in bite. As we look again at the number 2 car of Christopher Mies, still quickest overall, and Enzo Weed having a little sort of giggle with Christopher Mies, saying the back end just suddenly snapped, and that's the problem. It's getting, you think you got grip through tyre temperature, but actually it's still not at the operating optimum limit, and he just got caught coming out of turn 14.
But that said, he's still at the top of the timesheets. Vincent Abril has closed to within half a second, and Maxime Martin, as we said, also in the 1 minute 25s, as is another entry, Marco Bononomi in the ISR Audi. There we have the lone Ferrari in the race, the easiest car to identify, grass green and heading for the grass there through turn 14.
Interesting, they've put marker posts on the exit of 14 to prevent drivers having excessive use on the curb, so you have to bring the car back off the curb before those marker posts. They're only plastic, they're not going to do very much damage, but I think if you hit one of those posts, you could suffer potentially the attention of the race director.
Well, Marco Seidfried in the 333 Ferrari, entered by Rinaldi Racing, one of only 2 drivers not to set a flying lap. The other driver is of car number 70, the the Bernd Schneider. Bernd Schneider, he's a pretty good number 1 driver to have in your car. Late entry with the GT Russian team. He's driving with Alexei Karachev. Wait to see for it. It's not an Audi. Morning, John.
Damage to the front of the number 1 Audi, and that is going to be a little bit of a problem for Robin Freins. So why are Audis all going off? And this is again coming out of 14. How did he get there? Because he's come through the left-hander at 14, spun across the track. Vincent Voss, the boss of WRT, looking concerned. 2 of his cars going off on the identical corners. And in fact, there's another Audi driving behind, that's going into the pit lane. But Robin Freins has completely looped it round, steam coming from the front, so damage undoubtedly to part of the radiator, or the hoses connecting the radiator. So there you can see the concerned looks on the face of the Audi team.
Well, there's only a 10-minute gap between this session and
indeed.
Q2, so they've got to get the car back, they've got to get it fixed. Number 2 Audi is being sorted out at the moment.
Well, I think the difficulty is if that is a radiator damage, the gap, there's 4 minutes of this session remaining, the car will not be returned to the pits till this session is concluded. They then got to take the car apart, replace the damaged bits. It's going to be very, very difficult indeed for me to see Laurens van Vleuten. Red flag is actually being waved. That is a benefit to the team. So the car will be removed to the pits. This session has been red flagged, 4 minutes and 18 seconds remaining, so they can get the car back and hopefully get stuck into repairing it. But
But what a first session for the team. They've got 4 cars. Only one of them has not been in the wars, which is the number 4, started by James Nash. He'll hand over to Frank Stippler, but Pierre Dieudonné questioning. But ironically, they're still top of this timesheet. I know it will change when we come to Q2, but Christopher Mies in car number 2, that has all the damage up one side, is still top of the table.
what I'm amazed about is why is it that 2 of these Audi incidents have occurred on the exit of turn 14? Is it, I believe that they've ultimately not yet got the ideal tyre temperature that they would require. As we see, Stefano Ortelli, who's in the car 3, and Zoid, they're all looking at it. Concerned looks on the face of the drivers in some of the other Audis, Raquelny and Ortelli in car 3, and Zoid in car 2 with Christopher Mies. But it's Laurens van Vleuten, who has really been, for the last couple of seasons, the star driver in the Audi team. Questionable as to whether this car can be turned around, depending on how much damage or little damage there may be as a consequence. But that car has come through the left-hand corner and spun from right to left and ended up almost in the pit lane entrance, not just the pit lane itself.
But what we saw, the only driver we've seen out of those cars trying to give a demonstration was Christopher Mies. He was doing the classic, it just got away at the rear. It'd be great to be able to see a shot of what happened with Robin Frietz. Is this a case of him maybe not being used to driving a GT racer?
I think that there's an element of adaptation, and when you drive a single-seater car, it's a different style of race car. These are virtually full-on race cars, but of course they are a GT car. It's not the ultimate single-seater, which is what he's come from. And tyre limitation, tyre temperature, all these things, it takes a little bit of time just to get adapted to. And the team's saying, look, we know Robin Frietz has got phenomenal natural speed. We've seen that. What we have to do now is get him to get his, if you like, more endurance style head on, rather than the out and out. And there's the number 2 car, which had that damage to the right front. And you can see it. I mean, it's clods of earth just being pulled from underneath the car. Makes a mess. They're delighted that they've got this time now to work on the car. This car was in the pit lane at the point the yellow or the red flag was shown. So in this case, Christopher Mies and Zoid had a little bit of good fortune on their side to be in the pit lane when the red flag came out.
Yeah, good chance to take a look at the car. As you say, John, it was largely earth and grass. Yeah. It looks like we might have a new tray going under the front. They're taking the splitter off, and we will get a new one of those. In fact, there it is in the background, being held by one of the crew.
Yes. I mean, the front splitter is the most vulnerable part of the front of one of these cars. And of course, it's not the splitter itself, it's the attachments. So if the splitter can get damaged, but hopefully the attachments remain undamaged, so that it's just simply a case of removing one and replacing it with another. Estimated restart in what will be another few minutes, well, almost
couple of minutes,
yes.
So just running down the times, we have the Christopher Mies Audi we're looking at the top of the timesheets, 1 minute 25.281 seconds. Second fastest, we have a Bentley, which was Vincent Abril, 1 minute 25.757, so just under half a second down. And then right on his heels, we have another make of car, which is great, which is Maxime Martin, BMW Z4 for the BMW Sports Trophy Team Brazil. And then we have Marco Bononomi, second Audi there, but that's from the ISR team. And then we have 3 and 1, which is Richelme, also from the Audi Club Team WRT, and Robin Frietz. He was 6th fastest, off he went. We had no idea, in fact, how good that lap was. He was up on his best earlier in the lap, so he could have been faster. They're the only cars in the 1 minute 25 second bracket.
I think the name of the game here for most drivers is sort of snap oversteer. And Zoid, and just catching up, and you can just hear the conversation.
But first race of the season, it's always a nervous time just trying to settle down, and this really is not what you want in a team if 3 of your 4 cars have had moments.
Well, certainly not in qualifying, and we've gone through 2 practice sessions on Friday. and then one on Friday, one on Saturday. So everybody has an idea of what the circuit is doing. They've got an idea of, I mean, it's a green racetrack. That's part of maybe the problem. And to get that greenness removed, in other words, to get rubber down, you ideally need a little bit more heat. We've not had a huge amount of heat here over the previous 2 days. It's been in the low teens in terms of ambient temperature. So you'd like it to get up into the high teens and low 20s, if that's possible.
Well, I think we've got to look at the reason as to why these Audis were going off. It could be one problem. We saw very early on, as they're still trying to recover Robin Frienz's car. That's the one with the most damage, clearly, John. But let's take a look. We've got the Mercedes on the track. Well, that's the big use of the curb.
Yeah, well, that's actually the back end had gone. And this is Robin Friens. The back end of the car had gone before he even got to the curb. So, again, referring back to what everybody's having to struggle with, when you put the load into the car, and that was a lot of load, you could see the back of the car was squatting down. The coefficient of grip between the tyre and the racetrack just said, we've had enough, there's no more left. That's why the back end of the car stepped out. Now, part of the Audi handling balance is that it's a slightly more nervous car. When it's in ambient temperatures, this is the Christopher Mies one. Well, when he had the wobble, he corrected it. Of course, then in doing so, overcorrected, and you can see how there's, oh my God, dear me.
Okay, first it was the grass, and that's where the mud was applied.
Yes, indeed, and luckily did he stay off the wall. He got very close.
A little tap, I think.
He got very, very close indeed.
But that was a totally different sort of incident. We saw all his gesticulations.
The back end didn't snap as aggressively as it did in Robin Friens' car, which actually saved Robin Friens because it meant the whole car spun, and it spun inwards. So what happened with Christopher Mies, he got that little bit of a message that the back end was about to... There he is there, describing it to the team. Back end stepped out, put lock on, and then, of course, he got the overcorrection and went off to the right.
And here's the third Audi doing it, this time one of the ISR racing ones.
Even earlier.
Different again, closer to Friens, not so much
that one
Mies.
Just clobbers the two marker posts, well, one of them anyway. Again, it's lack of rear end bite, and 3 Audis caught up by the same thing. Going back to what I was mentioning about the way the Audi is set up, it is a slightly nervous car at the rear. In these conditions, you will think you get led into a sense of full security that you've got the grip, the balance there. The reality is, until you get that tyre temperature up to what is the full operating level of the Pirelli tyre, you, at any point in a corner where you're heavily loading a car and that you load it heavily in 14, it's quite liable to snap. So that's the characteristic of the Audi. In part, that's why the car is such a good race car, because it treads that very, very fine line between the balance being knife edge on the one hand, and then having a car that is ploughing on with no front end grip on the other hand.
And while all this has been happening, all the clearing up, John, of course, if you can see on the screen, it's starting to get a little bit brighter out there, so that will give them a very different circuit for them to go on. But still waiting for Robin Friens' car to be cleared up. Here's a repeat of the replay, and his tail, as you said, was so far out. That was what hit the curb. A lot of the other cars were riding it front wheels.
And I mean, the thing is that Friens didn't get into that initial overcorrection and then go off to the right. So has he got I'm just looking at that left rear. Is that left rear?
It does look skew.
It does look a bit out of shape, I have to say, because it would have been the right rear that would have actually been the wheel that rode the curb. So it's hard to tell by that particular image that we're looking at. But Marcus Winkelhock and Nicky Meyer-Melnhoff, who are in the Phoenix Racing number 5 Audi.
Well, it's of their benefit to be able to see these replays. It gives them half a clue as to what they could be facing.
Well, I think that both of them are fairly experienced. Marcus Winkelhock in particular. Again, a lock-up coming down into turn 7.
This was Stefan Michelmy at the end of the back straight.
I mean, that was a relatively harmless place to spin. The speed is off the car, you're on the brakes, and that was just simply turning in with the rear of the car unloaded. Whereas turn 14, you're hard on the throttle, trying to maximize your exit of the corner. But of course, in the case of Robin Friens, he got caught by that snap oversteer before he got anywhere near the curb.
Well, BMW Z4 drivers seem to be having a different task, and we've got Maxime Martin third fastest, but I think they're having a problem moving number one. They're trying to get it. You're right about the left rear being skewed because they're trying to raise it up so they can get it onto the flatbed at the moment.
It looks to me as if that left rear wheel, there is suspension damage, that it may be one of the components, and the left rear has been damaged for the cars leaning down. As we look at the Sperrifico brothers from Brazil, they'll find it a bit nippy, I suspect. Ricardo and Rodrigo Sperrifico.
And they're sitting in the timesheets down in 9th place. But a lot of these runs were curtailed, clearly, as they were just getting up to speed. 4 minutes still on the clock, according to their programme. And slightly frustrating. But
we've now got an estimated restart of 9:55, which is that's another 4 minutes to go. And they're still not successfully getting have they got the audio removed? I can't quite see in that rather dark image on the screen to see whether they got no, it's still there.
Yeah, well, they got the oxygen.
And it's that left rear is the problem.
It's quite galling. It's so close to pit entry, they just can't get it in. But frustrating times, Reiter Engineering.
Yeah, Hans Reiter talking to Alex von Thurn and Taxis.
Our one Lamborghini this weekend. Unusual to have that lower number, but we do expect more to be coming along to play later in the season. Of course, next weekend, first round of the Endurance Series, not 19 cars, 60 cars, 180 drivers.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive field at Monza. And how they're all going to get through that first chicane on the opening lap. I mean, you might want to take a sandwich with you and stop and just wait for everybody to get through, eat your sandwich, and then continue along your way.
I think your sandwich would be full of dust, wouldn't it? Kicked up, bump into your sandwich. Make it a sealed top one.
So something is happening for the Friens Audi. Looks like it. Have they got it?
Looks as if they've raised the front slightly. So, not the greatest of starts for Audi. You came in at the start of the session, you said it looks like an Audi sort of circuit.
Well, it is an Audi circuit, but right now, there you see Stefan Riccelli in the number 3 car, shares with Stefano Telli. This is the one that really we thought, where did Christopher Mies? I mean, that's like, it's up in the air. Never like to see a car doing that, and the very lightest of taps at the right front against the concrete barrier, but able to continue. Then this is the one that has caused the red flag to be waved. That's the Robin Friens number 1 car, shares with Laurens van Thor, and Laurens van Thor will be probably back in the hospitality, thinking, well, we're going to be starting at the back of this field for the qualifying race later this afternoon.
Yes, you do rather feel the race suit has been peeled off.
From that feeling, you know what? I feel sorry for Laurens van Thor, I feel sorry for Robin Friens, but I feel fantastic for the race. This is going to be a wonderful, I would say, drive through the field. It's not going to be what some people had feared might well be an Audi whitewash. So
now here's a first chance for us to really take a close look at the McLarens with the Hello Kitty livery, and this one is...
Explain to me.
Oh, I can't.
You're a dad. What is Hello Kitty?
Hello Kitty is something that festoons presents given to your daughter when she's about 5 years old. By the time she's 5.5, she's possibly lost interest. But in Japan, for grown adult women, it is beyond massive. I mean, I think it's fantastic. The cars look brilliant. It's dotted on drinks bottles, on T-shirts,
handbags. Is this the equivalent
handbags.
to Peppa Pig?
I think it's rather bigger.
Peppa Pig.
Pippa's the sister. Pippa's the sister.
Peppa,
I'm sure of that.
Yeah. Every dad listening will say Peppa, not Pippa.
That's good. You've woken them up on Easter Sunday. Cars look great. The 650S. Now we've got 55, which is Rob Bell, who was out at the start of this session, and Kevin Estra, both on the McLaren list of approved drivers.
So. I mean, and two really, really capable, competent, more importantly, quick drivers. Now, just looking down in the pit lane to see this Audi of Robin Friens being driven back, damage to the front bodywork, the headlight on the left-hand side is knocked out, and we think that there is suspension damage on that left rear, left front also. It didn't look that bad. I don't know what's happened.
Well, it looked like the smallest of the three shunts going over the curbs.
Yeah, but I don't understand why the left side of the car is the damaged side. I can't understand. Anyway, I've no doubt that he must have clobbered the wall.
He must have continued just after the shot. But
there we're looking into the Nissan of Sean Walkinshaw, Craig Dolby, and there you see BRDC. That's the members' badge. Craig Dolby, a member of the British Racing Drivers Club. Sean Walkinshaw, son of Tom Walkinshaw,
Son of Tom.
course, legend.
But isn't it great
in motorsport?
Isn't it great that Craig's got a drive? He's done so well in dotted here and there over the past 6 or so years. I think it's fantastic that he's got a season laid out ahead of him. He's a very impressive talent too. Sean will grow into the role in the Nissan.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many young racing drivers who have aspirations. We all had aspirations. As we look at the Audi being slowly returned to the Audi pits, everyone who gets into a racing car for their first race dreams that they're going to be in time at the highest echelon of motorsport. The reality is, a 10,000 into 10 doesn't work. The equation is not working. Or 10,000 into, say, 20, it doesn't work. And many drivers, young single-seater drivers, are realizing there is an opportunity, a career, a living to be made in other forms of motorsport. And one of these forms of motorsport is GT3 racing. In this case, the Blancpain GT Sprint and Endurance Series. Great racing. The point, it's just some of the best racing that I've ever seen as a broadcaster or as a driver, an ex-driver.
On top of which, the cars are so incredibly appealing. Here we are. We have 19 cars this weekend. We have 9 different makes. And in an age when so many single-seater series in particular are one-make formulae, the variety is great. The cars are presented in stunning fashion. And as you say, drivers like, I was just talking of Craig Dolby, he started in Formula Renault 1.6 in Belgium, a little-known series. He hasn't had the money to take the traditional route, and yet here he is. This could be his springboard.
Didn't he go down the Super League route
He
as
did,
well?
for many years, didn't do all the races. He dotted here and there. He did Formula Renault in Britain. Super League, 2008 to 2011. Bit of LMP2 in the World Endurance Championship, but a lot of the drivers from this will be able, the young professionals coming in here, to start filtering to the prototypes, but these cars are really, really good for their career.
Well, it is a big change, and it's the first change you've got to make is get over the mental, if you like, void of realizing you're not going to have the career in the disciplines and formula that you would like.
People don't only come here on the way up in their career. We also have Bernd Schneider. I mean, just such a legend for Mercedes. What an addition to the series.
Bernd Schneider retired from racing about 8 years ago, but he has returned to GT3 racing, to Blancpain, and he has had phenomenal success. If you want to put in a secure, safe, and I'm saying this hoping that we're not going to see Bernd Schneider slide off track, but there is nobody better behind the wheel of a GT car than Bernd Schneider. And he just brings stability, but not just that, he brings pace and consistency.
And just the level of experience. He's such a calm individual. He's the most perfect person to have in the garage. I saw him earlier this year in the Dubai 24 Hours. He's just loving his racing again. It's like the pressure's off. Yeah. He will put the pressure back on himself. Yeah. But
well, he's got nothing to lose. He is doing it because he just enjoys going motor racing, and he enjoys endurance events. I mean, especially 24-hour races, where you can, in the case of Dubai, you've probably got 4 drivers per car. So you're not actually knocking your pipe out for 24 hours. You can let, maybe for the nighttime hours, if that's what you would choose to do, somebody else do the driving. I suspect Bernd Schneider loves the nighttime hours because he can really get stuck in, and you use that experience and speed and hand it over to a younger kid who will say, oh, well, he's an old man, but I mean, his lap times, whatever, the excuses are, how can a man in his 50s outperform a guy in his early 20s?
Consistency, but just looking at those his lapping there, John, he's really pushing on a bit, as well as the fact, of course, that Mercedes SLS just sounds absolutely magnificent. But he was really working the front of the car. It's a big beast, though, but like the Bentley, it's much smaller underneath. Yeah,
it is. It's again, like the Bentley, it's probably not as ideally suited to Nogaro track, the 3.6 14-turn circuit, as the mid-engine cars will be. But, there's 2 events, 2 one-hour events, and there is a driver change. You have to look after your rubber, depending on what the tire temperature is going to be, depending on the ambient temperature. And it's expertise and skill, such as Bernd Schneider has got, that's going to be the difference between whether that car makes progress or whether it sort of struggles. So, well, I would wait to see. I mean, he's got Alexei Karachav beside him, not a hugely experienced driver. So Bernd Schneider's in there to do the lion's share of the driving, and hopefully Karachav will do his bit and bring it home, and not maybe be overawed by his first race in Blancpain.
But one of the things here, of course, it makes sense to put Bernd out in the car first. He can set it up, give the feedback to Alexei to go out into the second part of this three-part qualifying session. At the moment, though, still down, in fact, just dropped a position. Bernd Schneider down in 16th. Good chance to see the 333 Ferrari. Marco Seifried down in 14th place. In fact, he was the driver who just went ahead up into 14th, but 1 minute 27.2. That's almost precisely 2 seconds down on that very early time set by number 2 Audi of Christopher Mies.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, of course, the racetrack was relatively clear. Now we've got more cars on track, so you're having to deal with traffic and catching traffic at awkward parts of the circuit as the 54 McLaren gets ahead of the Ferrari. It's slowed down on the straight. Now, why he's done that?
Well, it's quite strange. Checkered flag will be out in just a handful of seconds.
At the end of this lap. So, again, just the McLaren, you could just see as it came through turn 8, they get the back of that. So, everybody really struggling for tyre temperature. And you have to be careful not to be aggressive on the turn and just feel the car in. And then when you get the sense that the grip is there, then you can load the throttle and put pressure on the rear of the car.
So the McLaren's at the moment down. 55 is in 8th position and 54 is down. This is the one we're looking at with Philipp Vlasic, the German driver, down in 18th out of 19, just coming around to complete that lap. But still, 1 minute 25.281 is the top time, as you can see on the bottom right of your screen, set by Christopher Mies on his first flying lap.
1:27.5 for the McLaren. That's 2.2 seconds down on currently the best time. And everybody is understandably in the pit lane, just these cars coming to finish their lap, complete the lap.
Yes, Bernd Schneider improved his position up to 14th place.
I'm surprised. I would have thought the Mercedes would have been further. I thought it would have been in the top 10 in relative comfort, but again, well, so it's whether it managed to get across the line before the flag came out. Bernd Schneider went down the back straight there. I just caught him over the top of the monitors in the commentary booth, still on it, but I suspect that's on it to come back into the pit lane.
Totally. So the end of Q1, interrupted, of course, by the number 1 Audi of Robin Freitz going around and clouting the pit wall. So not a great session. The speed was there, but slightly worrying, the handling performances there of the WRT Audis. 3 of the 4 of them went for a spin.
Yeah, I mean, and primarily Christopher Mies is the most experienced of the 3 that had those spins. I mean, Raikkonen, principally a single-seater driver, Robin Frein, principally a single-seater driver. Christopher Mies has had a season in the Audi, so he knows the quirks and idiosyncrasies of the R8. As just watch the McLaren coming, it'll be making its way into the pits. So it is this low ambient, low track temperature condition that is catching out the Audis. It's interesting that primarily it's coming through turn 14. The one car, which was the Raikkonen car, was at the end of the pit straight at turn 7, but that was more as a consequence of braking and then turning when the car was lightly loaded in the rear. And of course, that's pretty much an object lesson in what not to do with a car that's running cool temperatures.
But at least he remembered to stand on the brakes and not drift that little bit further back into the gravel trap there.
He's kept the car on the circuit, no damage to it whatsoever.
So we have 10 minutes or slightly less until the start of Q2. So it's hurry, quick down in the WRT garage. They've got 1 car to fix, another one to... I think the number 2 one should be ready again fairly shortly. Yeah. That was grass. Yeah, I mean,
principally it was more cosmetic for the number 2 car of Christopher Mies. We saw they had a fresh front splitter, which would be being in the process at the minute of being fitted. But the concern is for the number 1 Audi of Robin Freins, who had that off coming out of turn 14. And is that a vineyard in the background?
Fancy that in the Armagnac region, John.
I wonder why. So here we see the Bentley pits.
That's pit entry end. Yep. As you can see, also blue sky appearing. That's great to see. So 84 and 83.
And
a Porsche 911. Fancy that, John.
And only one of them here this weekend, but equally only one Ferrari 458. As we come down the pit lane further up, we see the
ISR Audis.
2 Audis. So 74
good chance to
75.
see the liveries of these cars, of course. 74 was the Anders and Thomas Fjordbach entry.
And then Felipe Salaquada and Marco Bonanomi.
And then our sole Ferrari 333. Easiest car to spot, bright green, looks great. And now Hello Kitty and Hello Kitty again.
Indeed,
so the 2 McLarens.
I think we'll leave the Kitty bit alone.
We've done it.
There's the Nissan of Sean Walkinshaw and Craig Dolby. That's a car which, again, front-engined. It's a bit like a Bentley Continental. a little bit less like the Mercedes SLS.
One for the Lamborghini fans, the sole Lamborghini this weekend, the Gallardo, Reiter Engineering of Nicky Katzberg and Albert Fontaine and Taxis.
Here are what I think, that's certainly the 77 BMW, the Brazil, Banco do Brazil BMW, with Maxime Martin and Dirk Müller. That is, for me, the one car that really should be a challenge as we go past other Audis.
That was the Phoenix Racing Audi. Then we come to the GT Russian team.
I don't like the SLS in yellow. It doesn't do much for me.
It doesn't. I'm not entirely sure I like it in the
white,
full
red,
Russian
blue,
colours, but it's never mind. The sound makes it up for me.
Indeed.
And then we have the War Zone. Number 4 stayed out of it. That was the James Nash entry. But number 3, we saw the spin early on. Number 2, they're still fixing bits to the bottom, and you can see all the detritus. But number 1 is the one that clearly will be back in the pit garage. The most work will be done on that. We may not see that until this afternoon.
There's work at the front because we saw steam coming from.
So let's take a look again, John, what happened. We had the yellow Mercedes coming around with Bert Schneider interview. He stays pretty much on the track, a little kiss of the curb, that's about fine. And then in the background comes Robin Freehan. Wait for it. Here he comes. As you said, the tail went, and now what's happening, John?
Well, the back end of the car is rotating. The car will now roll backwards, and somehow or other, he comes into contact. There you see, that's what it was. We didn't catch that initially. It was the left front and left rear made contact with the barrier, and that's where the damage on that left side came from. We only saw the car after it had hit that, then rolled forward. We didn't actually see the initial or the conclusion to the spin, so that's why the left side of the car is damaged, and that's why not only is the suspension damage, there's damage to the radiator, or certainly the radiator has been dislodged, and there was water, no doubt, causing the steam to come up from. That's a lot of work on the Audi. Now, we know WRT can work the oracle when it comes to repairing cars, because they've got every single item on that car duplicated in the event, primarily something like Spa 24, where you've got to get a car in, get it back out again, and lose the least amount of time. Yeah. So I'm assuming that they're operating that process. Back down the pit lane as we go past the 2 McLarens, the Ferrari. So they're the 2 independent Audis, and then ultimately we get back down to the FAC Autotech Porsche, yes. And then the 2 Bentleys. Good to see so many fans up on top of the roof of these this modern pit complex here, getting a chance to look down on these cars, and it's great that we brought 9 different makes of cars for them to enjoy. But better still, they'll look better in a minute because the sun is breaking through. It's burning off the cloud, and the clock is ticking. It's certainly clicking doubly fast if you're at Team WRT. But we're going to go out on the track again in a matter of moments. Yes, or seconds, in fact, because the track opens up at 10 minutes.
Which is now. We are green.
And it's now a green circuit. Blue sky. There's a high pressure zone over Western Europe, which is going to incorporate Nogaro and the general Armagnac region. But it's going to, I think, be later in the morning or early afternoon. Hopefully, by the time we get to the start of the sprint races, we now see Nicky Katzberg first out in the Lamborghini, and Nicky Katzberg at number 6. That'll be Markus Winkelhock in the second of the Phoenix Audis. So 2 drivers with a lot of experience and more to do, a lot of ability. Markus Winkelhock really very keen to try and get ahead of Nicky Katzberg at the earliest opportunity, and Nicky Katzberg opens up the door to let the Audi go through. Just on a night lap, you don't need to make an issue. So Markus Winkelhock putting a lot of speed into the car. He knows he needs to get tire temperature as quick as possible, and the best way to get it is to go as quickly as you can. Yeah, so he's taken the lead ahead of the lead position on the circuit as he goes down the back straight into turn 7. Unlike earlier on with Stefan Richelme, he gets it round the corner, and then the twisty bits before you go behind the old pits, then you go in front of the old pits to come round to complete the lap. But car looking good, the number 6 Audi, the 1 entry at the moment from Phoenix Racing, shared with Nicky Meyer-Meinhof. I mean, drivers and teams can make adjustments to their cars, and whether the Phoenix team have made an adjustment having seen what's happened to some of these WRT cars, in other words, to try and get a little bit more compliance into the rear of the car, maybe marginally soften it off just to make that transition. And you can see Markus Winkelhock comes out absolutely perfectly as he goes on to his first flying lap. Yes, there's using the curbs and using the curbs. He was running parallel with the edge of the curb, which is always a help, not hitting it at an angle, but his press-on form, as we saw him overtake in turn 5 on his outlap,
has paid dividends because he's now got clear track. Oh my golly, that front end didn't want to turn.
Well, that's just, again, this time it was the front of the car just didn't have the grip. He was loading it coming in to turn 4, and the front of the car said, no, I haven't got that grip.
Yeah, not
Marcus
yet.
quick off the brakes, gets the nose back in again. So that would have shaved maybe a couple of tenths of a second off what would have been, so far, halfway around a lap, looking a reasonably clean, good lap.
But actually, when you think about it, on a coolish morning, it's a chance to see these cars reach the moment when they've got the heat in the tyres, reach the moments when they want to behave. We've seen a lot of them, particularly the Audis, perhaps the best handling cars of the lot here, struggling.
Yes.
Pushing too hard too soon.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to what I mentioned earlier. The car is inherently a nervous car. But if you can get the optimum tyre temperatures into your 4 tyres, then you can make that a much easier car to drive. And I just wondered whether the Phoenix car, having seen what happened to the WRT cars, have taken the opportunity. Winkelhock catching up behind one of the McLarens, and he's getting compromised as he comes out 14. Had to check the car, goes across the line, a 1:26.035. Now that would have been a 1:25 something. One incident in turn 4, a little flinch, and then coming out of turn 14 had to check up to avoid running into the rear of the McLaren.
Yeah, it was the Fjordback McLaren, shared this time by the other Danish Fjordback, Thomas, on board. But yes, 2 compromises, so we can go faster.
Sean Walkinshaw in the Nissan through turn 13, dabbing a little bit on the brakes, just to get a little bit of a confidence dab. Comes out, runs wide,
clips that little marker pole, and he goes second fastest, 1:26.121, just a tenth of a second down on Marcus Winkelhock's best time so far.
And that's not a million miles away from the best time they achieved over Friday and Saturday running. So there we see the Maxime Martin, Dirk Muller, BMW. Now just listen.
So the final 2 corners going through turn 13 now. This is the key corner, turn 14. Onto the start-finish straight. Using the curves, but using them quite judiciously. And how fast is he?
Quickest.
He goes fastest, 1:25.432. That's still about 0.15 of a second down on Christopher Mees' time. Best time early on. But as long as we can have further 10.5 minutes of running, I'm sure he'll improve on that. 25.432 seconds to number 77. Now the sister car.
Yeah, the Sperafico brothers.
And who's on board? It's Zero, it's Rodrigo. Another great sounding car, the BMW Z4. Target time 1:25.432 by the sister car. And he slots 4th fastest, 1:26.145 seconds for Rodrigo Sperafico.
So gap between Muller, who's quickest, Winkelhock, who's second, is 22 hundredths of a second.
So what we have at the moment, we have BMW ahead of Audi, ahead of Nissan, ahead of the second BMW, and then the Lamborghini. And then another Audi, which is the 75 ISR entry with Philippe Salacada, family-run team. He's 6th fastest.
Number 3, and this is the car that we saw spin at the end of the straight, Stefano Telli, the irrepressible Monegasque driver. Spirit, heart, courage, every imaginable human plus in this driver. Again, uses the curb, but not ringing the neck of the car on the exit. So Otelli, this is the number 3 car, just to say, currently 4th quickest. So there's half a second currently between 1st and 4th, with the BMW leading 3 Audi, 2 Audis and a Nissan. Craig Dolby is listed as being the driver. We thought it was Dolby in the car initially, but it's showing Dolby to be the driver at this point.
Yeah, no, Walkinshaw we saw in the car for the first session. Yeah. Needless to say, as we have 12 of the 19 cars with a flying lap to their name in Q2, we don't have number 1. That's being worked on in the garage after Robin Friens' shunt that brought the red flag out to stop Q1 for some 15 minutes or so. So 77 setting the pace. That's Dirk Muller. That's a car we're tipping for great things this weekend. 1:25.432, and then right in behind now, just a tiniest fraction of a second, 1:25.454, but into the pits is Marcus Winkelhock.
That's in the, so I think that was the Enzo Weedcard.
Yeah, that's in as well. That's 11th fastest at the moment.
Back
Dolby
to the McLaren,
into the pits.
and now this is Kevin Estra in the McLaren, and I would like to think that Kevin Estra, as we go back to Maxi Book, fastest first sector for the Bentley. personal best second sector. What can this young German do? We know what he did in SLS over the last 2 seasons. He might be pint-sized in stature, but believe me, he is outstanding in a GT car.
Yes, I liked his use of the way he managed to turn right across the curves.
25.088, quickest lap all weekend.
Quickest lap of the day, of the weekend. That's what you call setting your marker. But where there was an apex to be cut, he was right on it. There wasn't a millimetre to spare on his right-hand side as he went through turn 13 there. Now, back to zero, the Rodrigo Sparafico BMW. It was slow last time down the back straight. I don't know if he had a problem in corners 3, 4 or 5, but now he's starting to wind it up again. But the target time has been lowered, 1 minute 25.088 seconds as Rodrigo comes around to the final corner. Turn 14 hardly uses the curbs at all there. He's down in 8th place at the moment, and he stays in 8th place, no improvement.
The second of the 2 Mercedes come across the line. That's shared by Christophe Boucher and Alexei Valesev.
Now Frank Stippler's taken over the number 4 Audi, the one that didn't have any wars in Q1, and he's 4th fastest at the moment. Really heavy braking down towards into turn 7 at the end of the back straight, and keeping the car really, really well balanced.
Well, Frank Stippler is, if you're going to do a 72-hour race around the Nürburgring, the driver I would like behind the wheel of my race car for those 72 hours is Frank Stippler. He is metronomic. He's got speed. He may not be the ultimate out-and-out millisecond fastest lap of all the drivers, but he is such an outstanding driver in endurance racing, even be it in historic racing. Equally successful.
Oh, he's absolutely brilliant. I enjoy his performances at Goodwood. He did improve his lap time, but stays in 4th place overall, half a second down on Maxi Book. That was quite a lap from Maxi. Just looking to see his performance on the follow-up lap in the Bentley, not as good. Might be coming into the pits. He is into the pits, just as I say that.
Part of the reason is everybody...
Oh, another spinner, 74, that's one of the ISR cars. That's Thomas Fjordbach. No damage done.
It had to be a Fjordbach.
I know it did, but I thought I'd add the Thomas element.
So there is one of the 2 other Audis, MRS GT Racing. So the little spins, I mean, it is interesting that primarily the majority of incidents we've seen have been Audis, and again going back to this balance factor. This is a car, takes me back to my memorable days when in 1965 this car, actually probably 64, went into production, and it is now in its 51st year, I think, of production. Amazing, isn't it?
Yes, I was watching a lot of the celebrations last year of the 50th anniversary, and just looking at the evolution of the car. And but only the one here, which is very rare in GT racing. It's the only car, apart from number 1, not to have set a flying lap, but Martin Rackinger is going well. Let's see what he does when he gets to the end of the lap. He certainly won't be doing a 1 minute 25.088. Crossing the start-finish line now, and he's slowest of all, but all the others have done 2 or 3 flying laps. He has done just the one. 5.5 seconds down on the ultimate pace, though. 4.8 seconds down on the ultimate pace.
Well, just under 4 3/4 minutes remaining. Is still a Bentley, a Maximilian Buch, who's quickest by 3/10 of a second from Dirk Muller in the bib. So 2 front-engine cars going against what normally is the form here in Nogaro. But in fairness, you have to say the leading mid-engine cars, which are fundamentally the Audis, have been stepping on their own toes.
Yeah, and I was just looking down the timesheets for where we'd see. Oh, that's the red, white, and blue Mercedes. Who's that walking across the pit lane?
That must be Manjab. That's Maximilian Buch.
So up onto the pit wall there, the team closest to the entry. Another car coming to the pit lanes, one of the McLarens. I was just going to say, I was looking at the McLaren's positions, and they're down in 11th place for Kevin Estra, and 17th place for Japanese driver, late into the series.
I'm just looking at the timing and scoring. Marcus Winkelhock has just gone second quickest. So again, I don't know whether Marcus has been in the pits, made a change, but whatever they've done, they've found a little bit of time. So Winkelhock now within just over 1/10.5 of a second of the fastest time, which is still standing to Maximilian Buch in the Bentley. Muller down to 3rd place. Frank Stippler still in 4th. Nicky Katzberg 5th, and Stefano Telli in 6th. So we're on board here with Nicky Katzberg. And place 5, 125.8, half a second away as he's
backed off.
Yeah, backed it indeed. number 6.
You'll be pleased to know that the lone
race.
Porsche we were looking at just moments ago is up to 7th place. So Martin Ragginger and his second flying lap has started to apply.
I mean, part of the reason why Porsche are not more present is because there are so many race series where Porsche focus, and they're trying to develop their own brand and their own race series. But it is still at some circuits, not at every circuit. On somewhere like Nogaro, it ought to be quite an effective car. It's on the very high-speed circuits where it's a draggy car. It's a very draggy 911 RS.
Marcus Winkelhock coming round to complete his lap. He's second at the moment, 1 minute 25.270, but he did set his fastest first sector of the 3, so the speed, there's still more to come. Yeah,
but I think they're going to be fairly happy with that run by Marcus Winkelhock. Maximilian Buch getting back into the Bentley now. There's only 2 minutes remaining. He can get out and start a flying lap if he gets on with the program, but it's somewhat relaxed. Maximilian Buch doing up the lap straps,
but importantly, he will be driving that car in the third session. Much as we just seen Marcus Winkelhock, he will be going out in the third session, so he can carry forward that experience.
Yeah.
So Bentley's still blazing around the circuit, but Maxi Buch fastest in 84, and the sister car number 83 is with Jules Simkowiak, who stepped across from Formula 3 Euro Series racer.
Who was his teammate last year?
Just got to think who
Max Verstappen.
Of course he was. They were big teams, of course. Yes,
indeed. It just goes to show that here's a guy who was a partner to the youngest driver in Formula 1. He's doing GT and the other's doing Formula 1. How much good fortune, let's say, or was it just simply down to the ultimate performance on the racetrack? Whatever. But certainly Max Verstappen. It did seem like that, or a barbecue going haywire. Maybe the BMW. The BMW, that's what it was. We think we may have had a spinner, and it would have been Sperifico.
Who had just set the fastest first sector of all. So what a waste, you do all that, but you push too hard. But that's sitting down, fastest first sector, but that's set by a car down in 10th place on the timesheets. The sister car is in 3rd at the moment, but that's in the pits. So 83 at the moment with Jules Simkowiak crossing over from Formula 3. Bit of slide there from the rear. And he's down in 9th place.
I think this car may have sponsorship or personal sponsorship from one of the drivers from a well-known Parisian nightclub known as the Moulin Rouge.
Indeed. So quite applicable for a 19-year-old.
I think it's maybe an Olivier Lombard, whose father used to race in GT or Sport, I think Group C, back in the 80s. And in fact, one of my former teammates, Patrick Tongbay, whose son Adrian also is trying to make his way into professional motor racing and doing it reasonably successfully. They also had this long-term association with the famous Parisian club. There's the checkered flag. So Q2 is coming to an end, and we'll have the combined best times, and that will then be the shootout for the top 10 grid positions.
Well, Jules Simkowiak has just moved up to 6th place, and
that's a good run.
That is a very good run. So Bentley should be very pleased. They're 1st and 6th coming out of Q2. So that's I'd say that's better than they expected.
But also, both cars, say that touching wood, intact. Particularly the 83 car, driven by the less experienced Jules Simkowiak. That's a good effort. I think HTP will be very happy indeed with what their two cars have done.
Yes, we've talked about drivers stepping across from one type of racing to another, and drivers stepping across from one type of GT car to another. But for the team, HTP Motorsport, Mercedes through and through, it's been a big change, but they do seem to be really getting a handle on this.
Well, I spoke to them yesterday. They are absolutely over the moon with this car.
Just gone 4th. Jules Simkowiak pretty much had the track to himself. That is a hats-off drive.
That is an outstanding run. I think that actually, in many respects, is probably one of the standout performances in this second qualifying session. I mean, first of all, the HTP team are delighted because they've got a car that is more akin to a race car than an adaptation of a road car. Very sophisticated indeed, but also extremely well thought out from an engineering point of view. For example, they said if we ever had the misfortune to need to change an engine, we don't have to jack the car up, or whatever. They just remove round that, take the hood of the car off. There are quick snap detachable fixings. The whole radiator front pulls away. They just pull the engine straight out of the front of the car. It's been extremely well thought out, not just from the point of view of being a good race car, but from being a car from a practical point of view that you have to work on it, that you can do it in the most efficient way, which is not surprising, being that the engineering has come from a rallying background.
Yeah, but also not so long ago, well actually probably about 20 years ago now I think about it, but DTM started to do that with all these unitary elements for quick remove and stick back in, and it does show how motorsport really does sort of lead the way in so many sort of ways of approaches, practices that can be carried into industry. And there, of course, on the left is the pit wall that was hit by the number 1 Audi. Luckily, the Jules Simkowiak knows his way around it and into the first pit garage. See the Blancpain flags blowing gently over the pit lane. The wind is coming across the circuit towards, in fact, into our faces.
Yeah, it is, and it's beginning to pick up because the flags are actually waving, where maybe half an hour, 40 minutes ago, they were just about getting the first sense of a breeze coming. So I don't know whether that's going to do anything for the ambient temperature, but hopefully now the sun is sort of getting higher in the sky. As we're at local time here, it's coming up to 10:30 on Easter Sunday morning. That will, let's say, bless the circuit with some heat.
It does certainly look that way. So let's just run down the order. At the end of Q2, we still have the shootout for Q3 coming up, but we have Maxi Bouc for the 84 Bentley fastest on 1 minute 25.088 second. And in fact, looking at the best sector times, if they were combined, the theoretical best lap was 1 minute 24.707. Not necessarily all those best sectors set by Maxi Bouc in the 84 Bentley, but he's sitting on the top of the time charts by 0.2 of a second or thereabouts from Markus Winkelhock, who looked very impressive in the Phoenix Racing Audi number 6. Third fastest is the BMWs with the driver we tipped, well, the pair we picked early on, and it was Dirk Muller who did the job in the 77 BMW. 1 minute 25.432 seconds, so a third of a second down overall on Maxi Bouc. And then right at the end, Jules Simkowiak put the second Bentley into 4th place, just pipping the Audi of Frank Stippler.
Yeah, I mean, it's front-engined, actually almost, unexpectedly trumping mid-engine cars. And I spoke to the Bentley team, as mentioned earlier, at some length yesterday, and they were saying, we don't think this is a circuit that is a naturally advantageous circuit for us. Well, they certainly did the right thing. Max Bouc went up with a fresh set of tyres on his car and nailed it and got that time. Now, what they will do in this final qualifying segment, we wait to see. But you have to look to the Bentley, because both Bentleys in the top 4. Markus Winkelhock, best of the Audis. The Dirk Muller, Maxime Martin BMW. Likewise, it's going to be Maxime Martin qualifying that car. I mean, I don't know who's going to be in pole position. I mean, you have to think it's going to be a BMW, an Audi, or a Bentley. Well, don't you?
You do. You said with great emphasis, as I was just looking to see if anybody else could go up there. We were just looking at, how about a Ferrari? But no, Marco Seefried and Norbert Siedler have just not managed to really make that sing yet. But again, we had the interrupted sessions early on.
Yeah, I mean, things like the 458, again, we're only seeing them from time to time. Potentially, I mean, a great GT car. We know in other race series that they run at the very front and they're competitive. But with each individual series, there are individual rules. Balance of performance clearly is an issue all the time, because drivers and teams are always trying to gain an advantage, and somebody doesn't want to show their hand too early, because if they do that, they think they might be disadvantaged. So we're not quite sure why the Ferrari, I mean, we've seen it perform very strongly, maybe more so in Enduro rather than in Sprint, where there's many more 458s, particularly with the gentlemen or the amateur drivers who enjoy the longer duration, 3 or 6 or even Spa 24 hours.
Now, as we take a detailed look at the 650S, of which Filip Vlasic will be going out. Of course, this is one of the sort of less experienced pairings, to put it mildly. Filip has more experience, but his teammate, Yoshiharu Mori, very short on experience, has largely done a 24-hour endurance series last year, a bit of Dubai 24, and he's come here, so it's a big ask. So it's a good thing Filip, I think, is going out to do the qualifying shootout.
I mean, doing Dubai 24 hours, almost like a sort of interrupts your beach holiday, doesn't it?
It does. It's a winter clubby, great chance to see a bit of sunshine, and you get drivers from the calibre of Bernd Schneider and Jeroen Blekemolen down to people who are out there racing in a VW Golf, but it's none the worse for it.
And occasionally you get the odd shake, rattle and roll doing it too.
You certainly do, often winning it.
Indeed.
And so the Nissan entered by Emirates GT Racing, Craig Dolby, not surprisingly the far more experienced pair of that duo, Will. There he is, strapped in, ready to go. 10-minute shootout though, quick fire.
Yep, the sun is out, the track will bit by bit pick up temperature. Question is, do you run on the best set of your best set of tires, or you may have just used one set of tires for those 2 pre-qualifying sessions, or do you put a new set on? This is what the team's got to decide. I suspect that at some point, what I would describe as the front 6 will opt for a new set of tires. At some point, they'll go out and maybe do a quick run just to make sure that the car is pretty much as it was when it came in, then put a new set of tires on, or they might just put it on straight away and nail it and stay out for 10 minutes is about the equivalent of about 6 laps around here, so you don't have that much time to speculate or to fool around.
John, I was just looking at the flags blowing above the pits. The wind is certainly picking up, but I suppose the interesting thing is it's across the start-finish straight. It's not going to drive them off at the far end.
No. I mean, the wind, in terms of being an ideal direction, is about as ideal as you could wish it for. There's no gain or effect coming onto pit straight or going down the rear, the straight at the...
But if you overcook it at turn 14, it should push you back towards the circuit. But that's a nice theory, isn't it?
That would be the theory, I think it would be.
So, Marcus Winkelhock leading out onto the circuit for this final 10-minute shootout, just under 9.5 minutes remaining. Will he have clear track for his first flying lap, or will he be mired in the groups of cars coming out after him? There's the question.
Well, at the minute, he looks to be the only person. Otelli has also gone out, so Otelli is behind, but if Marcus
he could be lucky.
He could be lucky. He's got to complete this out lap, then he's going to go on to his first flying lap, and all he can hope for is as he goes on to the flying lap, he isn't then faced with about 6 or 7 cars coming out of the Marcus Winkelhock and his teammate Nicky Meyer-Mellenhoff. That's right, Nicky. The problem for anybody in this session is, are you going to catch cars that are waited for a minute, and there are cars literally, as we're speaking, leaving the pit lane.
Yeah, we have 4 on the circuit. Martin Ragginger has just pulled out from the Facultatech garage right beneath us and going past the old pits. The final few corners of the circuit, 13, 14 coming onto the start-finish straight, goes with a clear track ahead of him, so well worked there by the Phoenix Racing team. Goes Marcus Winkelhock.
He will catch the Porsche on this lap somewhere, whether it's at the end of the straight into turn 7 or maybe more crucially in those sequence of corners 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 where you really need a cooperation. And we saw Marcus Winkelhock coming into turn 4 in the second qualifying session having a little bit of a wobble. This time the car much more stable. Porsche is probably going to come into play towards the end of the straight. There it is.
It's halfway down the straight.
You know, he's got to be using his mirrors.
About turn 11, 12.
Yeah, that's not an ideal place, so hopefully Ragginger will be able to keep an eye and not impede the progress of Marcus Winkelhock.
So you can see on the screen the purple sector time, 29.180 seconds. Of course that's the fastest because they get reset for the start of each of the seconds. Each of the sessions going around towards what used to be the final few corners of the lap, but there ahead of him, I think it's going to be marginal, but I think it's going to be about turn 13, 14, the final sequence of corners where the damage could be done to this lap.
Well, he's pulled over, so he's done a good job. He's seen
the flags. Well done, Martin Ragginger.
And Marcus Winkelhock. Could this be the first sub-125 second lap? It's been a good lap from what we can see from Marcus Winkelhock. Obviously, purples in every sector. So let's see what this young driver is going to do. 124.9.
Well done. There was the target. The target has been knocked down, but already showing impressive speed is Stefan Ortelli in the number 3 Audi. And Nicky Meyer-Mellenhoff very happy in the pit garage. But qualifying, it can be a shimmerer, a moving target.
It can, and let's have a look and see what we're going to... This is
number 3 with Stefan Ortelli on board. He has a purple middle sector, and already number 77 has gone faster overall in the opening section. Ortelli, 24.732, takes the lead.
Well, we've got 6.5 minutes of the session remaining as we look at Maxime. It is Maxime Martin in the BMW. So his individual sectors are fastest overall sector 1, personal best sector 2.
About 0.2 down in the second sector, so that could be crucial. He coming down to complete. There's turn 13, riding great onboard camera work as we go through the final sequence of corners. Don't just blow it at the final corner, but he uses the curves very sensibly, and well, he goes in third place. Craig just deposing moments after he'd done it. Craig Dolby's time, who'd gone third for Nissan, back down to fourth. So it's Ortelli in an Audi, Winkelhock in an Audi, Maxime Martin in a BMW, and now down to fourth place, Craig Dolby.
More confidence coming from Winkelhock, using more of the curb on the exit of turn 12. So he needs to find his personal. He's not seen anything significant on this lap. In fact, not at all of an improvement. Last up 25.1 was against the 24.9. So has he got anything left in the tank with 5.5 minutes remaining?
I've got a secret. Fastest overall in the first sector, Maxi Book, 28.871 in the number 84 Bentley. He set his personal best in the second sector. Let's see, coming to complete another lap. It's still Ortelli. Does he improve his time? No, he doesn't.
25.3.
That was Christopher Mies.
So Max and Book. Let's have a look and see what the Bentley will do into turn 13.
He's lost a lot of ground through sector 2. The fastest time, he did a 27.6, the fastest time of 26.9, but will he go into first place? Will Ortelli stay there? Ortelli does stay there, 1 minute 24.918, second fastest. So Bentley into second place, Ortelli fastest for Audi.
The Bentley does change direction. It gets the front of the car in as we go back to the Porsche. 29.4 in that first sector.
It's the slowest of the 9 cars who set a flying lap, still waiting for the Lamborghini of Nick Katzberg.
Look, middle sector, Porsche, fastest.
But look, but it was 26.911. He's a star, isn't he? He knows his marketing.
How sweet is that?
So 9th at the moment for Martin Ragginger in the red and white FAC Autotech Porsche, coming through the final sequence of corners now. The target time, 1 minute 24.732 seconds, set by Stefan Ortelli. What will it be, John?
Fifth
fastest. No, 8th fastest.
Disappointing. That last sector time didn't quite do it. Personal best, but obviously not sufficiently good. But an interesting middle sector. Here we go back to Maximilian Book. This is not. So he's got a personal best in the middle sector. Nothing of any significance in that first sector. So 3 minutes, just 3 minutes 40 seconds of this. He's got another lap, and he might just make it for a penultimate lap.
So how do you manage your tyres in this session? Do you think they've got enough space on the track? We've got a 3.6 kilometre lap and only 10 cars. You can space it, but the clock is ticking away. 3 minutes 20 seconds remaining.
Inherently, the first flying lap on a new set of tyres is going to be your best lap. So
okay, the only driver who just set the flying lap there, his first flying lap, is Nicky Katzberg, 10th overall at the moment. So the gap between first, which is Stefan Ortelli, and he, just under 1 second. 0.947 of a second. So it's still Audi from Bentley, from Audi, and then BMW. Who's going to be the player at the end of the session? Can anybody beat Stefan Ortelli? 24.732. Looking at number 2, sister car. Down in 7th place, Christopher Mies on board. He had that moment early on. He collected the grass. He showed us the bottom of his car. He stuffed it with mud, clipped the barriers, but he got out to fight again.
A little bit, maybe a momentary loss of confidence, just waiting to get that message back from the car that the car is working better. That was just an apparition earlier in the session. It was an hour ago almost. The track was cooler. Car looks, that's what an Audi should look like coming through turn 14.
Yeah, looking very well balanced. Now looking back at 84 with Maxi Book on board. His last lap 25.292, so a third of a second down on his best lap. Not looking so good this time around.
No, I think the best of the rubber has now left the Bentley. I think he's coming into the pits, in fact, and his run is effectively over. So he's going to start, all things being equal, with just under 2 minutes remaining. Will be on the front row alongside Stefan Ortelli. Winkelhock is in the pits. His day is done. Maxime Martin, well, there's the Maxime Martin now comes across the line in 77. So he's going on for another try to see if he can bring that BMW up onto the front row of the grid and join Stefan Ortelli. Well,
he'd made the pit stop, and now, as you say, 1.5 minutes remaining in this session. This is his chance to go out and do it. But Ortelli's advantage, 0.186 of a second from Maxi Book. Book's in the pits, not likely to get back out again to do anything before the checkered flag. brings this qualifying session to a stop, the time qualifying session. Of course, we have the qualifying race this afternoon.
Yeah, just keep an eye. Personal best for the BMW, just over 0.159 of a second down. So it's certainly a front row of the grid time is within the reach of the BMW of Maxime Martin. Of course, he's still got 2/3 of the lap remaining as he comes down into turn 7 at the end of the straight. Then you try and make turn 8 into sort of 7 and 8 is one, then back to the left, turn 9, let the car run out wide, use the curb, then cut back in again for turn 11, turn 10.
He's down in 4th place at the moment. He only has to find 0.2 of a second. He'll be second fastest. So it's super close. He has 2 green sectors, sectors 1 and 2. This should be a front row. Will it be pole?
I don't think it'll be pole. I think it will be a front row alongside Stefano Telli. But who knows? We've got 1 sector to go. He could go purple in this final sector and actually take that privileged pole position away.
So the time to beat, 1 minute 24.732. You can see it in the bottom right of your screen. How fast will it? 1 minute 28.4.821. So a good shot, BMW.
89 hundredths of a second. That's all the time. Minute amount of time. Maxime Martin has done what he's so good. He's such a canny guy. Doesn't give anything away in any of the sessions, but when it matters, he's there. And we've now got gliders taking off as well around us.
It's a magical place.
It's lovely.
Magical place in the world of Armagnac. So, Ortelli sitting on top. We have 0 seconds to go. The checkered flag is now out. Who's on track setting times? In fact, the only cars on track were Maxime Martin. We see him going down the back straight, and further around the lap we have Christopher Mies, who's only 7th fastest for the team WRT Audi outfit. But Audi at the top of the charts, the sister car, Stefan Ortelli, but certainly the BMW Sports Trophy Team Brazil, as you can see them on the pit wall, very happy indeed with their Belgian star Maxime Martin, who just slotted into 2nd place right at the end.
Interesting, I think also a time that we sort of didn't get to see an awful car, we didn't see a lot of, is Craig Dolby in the Nissan GTR in 6th position, 3rd on the grid.
He was 3rd fastest very early on as the first few laps came in, was pushed down the order, but I'm impressed with that.
That's a good effort. I think that's a strong run from Nissan. A new team, new driver pairing. I think they'll be happy to start on this 3rd row of the grid. And just the main thing is keep out of trouble. Get the car into position, because your finishing position will relate to your start position come Monday for the main race. So the last car into the pits, Maxime Martin's BMW Z4, just being asked to park in front of the scrutineering bay, but a great job there. Couldn't match Stefan Ortelli's time early on. We've talked about Stefan's experience. It goes on and on and on and stretches so far back, Le Mans 24-hour winner. But he delivered this morning, he kept the car's balance, and there is the finishing order after the time qualifying with Stefan Richelmy and Stefan Ortelli, who set the time, topping the timesheets. Then the BMW of Maxime Martin and Dirk Millett, and then Vincent Abril and Maxi Buch, 3rd fastest for Bentley. Nicky Meyer-Mahnhoff and Markus Winkelhock, 4th fastest for Audi. And then James Nash and Frank Stippler, a quiet performance from them, but 5th overall. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a solid performance. They're in positions, 3rd row of the grid. We know what Frank Stippler can do. We know that James Nash is adapting and learning, driving a GT car, quite different from a British touring car, but a young guy with a lot of future. Yes, and then rounding out the top 10 in that final shootout, Sean Walkinshaw, Craig Dolby for Nissan, Christopher Mies and Enzo Ide, 7th fastest for Audi. Then Jules Simkowiak in the number 83 Bentley was 8th. Martin Ragginger, 9th fastest in the 911. And Nicky Gatzberg completing the runners in the number 88 Lamborghini. How do you get to be called Jules Simkowiak and you're a Dutchman? A little bit of cross-border movement, I'm sure, John. Is that to do with the EU, do you think? Well, you can be the judge of that. But a very fine driver. In fact, it's only his 3rd season of racing. So he's adapting fast. Formula BMW, good job, absolutely. Formula 3. Moving big steps. Big steps. Giant Steps, I think was the name of a great album. Trying to think, was Miles Davis Giant Steps? Can't remember. Well, I'll leave that to you, John. But let's look back at these sessions. We had a lot happening, John. Right from the outset, the cars went on the track. The first twitch of the day to the first car out on the circuit, the Reiter Engineering Lamborghini. And that was Albert von Thurn in Texas. Look at the amount of work that Albert has having to just balance the car and the steering. A lot of understeer. He's having to wind lock on to try and get the Lamborghini's nose, then twitches at the back, then into turn 5, and again. So we see the Audi 74. That was Marco Boninobi, but that was the key early on. It was trying to get some heat into the tyres, but and a spin through turn 14. Remember that corner number, because we'll have a few more to follow. That one got good marks, but this one, Christopher Mies did a lot of damage. Oh, almost got it airborne, and eventually a little kiss on the concrete wall, which probably was almost negligible in terms of damage. The damage being done was actually going off. But Kelney down at the end of the main straight.
Down at the end of the back straight, going for a spin in turn 7, but the corner that will come back to bite the team WRT on the bottom was turn 14, and there is Robin Freed, a star in practice yesterday, really setting the pace, but a big clonk. With
the more I see it, the more I realise that was actually a substantial impact with the barrier. I mean,
inevitably that brought out the red flag, because sitting on the exit of the final corner, the entry to the pits, was that rather broken number 1 Audi, and it took a while to be cleared up. And then the driver setting the pace was the number I haven't seen how close he got before. Winkelhock. Yeah. He was desperate not to lose the end of that lap, came upon the one of the 2 McLarens there, and then Maxi Book really started flying for Bentley, and we started to have to reappraise what we were thinking as he started to challenge the fastest of the Audis. He ended up 3rd overall. But the very greatest performance of all, we started to see BMW showing its hand. We saw, and here's one of the BMW chargers, Maxime Martin, a real star.
Yeah, I mean, this is the last gasp of qualifying. We waited. Fresh rubber and front row of the grid start position.
But the driver who came through at the top was Stefan Ortelli, using 20 years of racing experience and more to take pole position for Audi.